Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today for recognizing the moment when it's time for memory care. My name is Lauren, and I will be your presenter today. Just as a quick note, feel free to come off mute or come on camera at any time if you have any questions. My intention is for this to be more of an interactive webinar. I'm also joined by Kara, who is with Walnut Village, who is sponsoring this webinar for us today. Okay, I will go ahead and I'll just speak briefly about Walnut Village on Kara's behalf. Walnut Village is centrally located in Anaheim, California, and is an active retirement community with independent living, assisted living, and memory care. Owned and operated by Front Porch, a not-for-profit organization, Walnut Village has been a respected leader in the senior care industry, serving seniors since in Orange County since the late 1930s. This month, Walnut Village will be opening up an expanded wing of their memory care neighborhood called Summer House. Summer House takes a resident-focused, relationship-based approach to memory care. And our philosophy of care at Summer House is we believe in connections. We believe that memory support is about more than just safety and security. It's about a life full of purpose, fulfillment, and connection. We believe in honoring the connections between residents, their loved ones, and our staff. We create a sense of belonging and continuity throughout routines that feel familiar and comforting. Our approach nurtures purpose, helping residents engage in worthwhile activities while seeking meaningful moments and encouraging fulfillment through relating with others. We believe in honoring every resident's journey, creating moments of significance and achievement that make each day feel special. We believe in support that centers of the resident and based on our relationship with the whole person. So that's a little bit about Walnut Village. If you haven't had a chance to check out their new memory care, please do. It's absolutely stunning. So, okay, perfect. So now let us start with and then a little bit about me. My name is Lauren. I'm the Educational Services Manager here at Alzheimer's Orange County, and I have about close to 20 years of experience within the dementia care industry, primarily in memory care and assisted living. So this is a conversation that I'm very passionate about. So perfect. So today, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what is memory care. Signs that your loved one may be ready for memory care, factors to consider when looking for memory care options, and navigating the transition from home to a memory care. So first, I'd like to start off with reviewing the lives of Bob, Janice, and Martha. And I would like for us to talk about if they are ready for memory care. So first, we'll talk about Bob. Bob lives at home alone. His daughter comes over to visit him once a week to bring him groceries and set up his medications for the week. When his daughter arrives, she notices he is wearing the same clothes as last visit. He has not taken his medication, and the fridge was still full of food. Our second scenario is Janice. Janice lives at home with her husband, Doug. The other day, Janice got lost while driving home from their local grocery store. Janice told her concerned kids that it was a normal part of aging and happens to everybody. Her kids also noticed that Janice defaults to Doug for answers to simple questions such as, "What did you have for dinner last night?" And lastly, we have Martha. Martha's husband passed away 2 months ago, and she has lived on her own since. Her daughter, Sarah, flew out to visit her for the first time since the funeral. Martha answered the door in a blouse that was not buttoned correctly and unkempt hair. When Sarah checks the kitchen, she sees bowls in the sink caked with food, and in the fridge, she sees moldy and expired food. Martha says there is nothing wrong with the food and becomes upset with Sarah. So as we look at these three individuals, I would like
Your audio is not working, Lauren.
Lauren, your audio cut out.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, what point did I cut myself off?
After the reviewing all the scenarios.
One more time.
After reviewing all the scenarios.
Okay, perfect. I pressed the button. And then now I can hear you, Kara. So apparently everybody could have heard you. before that was on me. I apologize, everybody. Okay, so with all three scenarios, you all heard me say them, right? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Wonderful. So when we look at all three, which either come off mute or go into the chat box, which of the three or all of three do you believe are ready for memory care?
Number 3, number 2,
Okay, we have
all
some.
3 probably.
Okay, perfect. We have a couple of different people, 1 and 3, all 3, 2 and 3. Okay, great. So we'll go back and we'll do one at a time. So when we look at Bob, Bob's living at home alone. He's doing pretty well. He needs a little bit of assistance from his daughter to help with the groceries and setting up medication, putting his medication in the pill box on a weekly basis, probably. And when she comes in, she notices that he's still wearing the same clothes and he hasn't taken his medications and he hasn't eaten. Now, from what we have, it seems that Bob is doing okay and he's off, that there's something going on with him that's causing this confusion and this disruption. So for Bob, it would be best if if his daughter takes him to the doctor and he gets a full evaluation. When we have things like a UTI or dehydration that can wreak havoc on somebody and cause a lot of confusion. So this may be simply that he has an untreated UTI, and that once that's rectified, he's on antibiotics, he'll go back to being at his baseline, which is being able to live alone at home. When we have Janice, so Janice lives at home with her husband, Doug, and she got lost driving, and she's starting to lean on Doug to answer simple questions. Now, with Janice on her own accord, maybe she's ready for memory care. However, since she lives at home with her husband and she has a lot of support from her children, she may not be ready quite yet. If her husband is happy to have her at home, her children are happy to take care of her and keep an eye, and they're willing to bring in some in-home help, then she's appropriate to stay at home. Again, the conversation needs to be that she shouldn't be driving anymore. But for the most part, she's okay, as long as her family's willing to put in that work of being their caregiver for her. And then we have, then we have scenario 3. We have Martha. Martha, who is living alone, she does not have family support, and her daughter notices that she has unkempt hair, her food's moldy, she's not eating well. Now, of the 3, Martha's the most appropriate for memory care, primarily because she doesn't have any support. She lives at home alone. She doesn't have anybody to care for her, to provide that oversight, to make sure she's eating well, that her groceries are fresh, and that she's taking her medication. So because her daughter lives so far away, it would be an appropriate conversation for her to move into a memory care. Now, again, all 3, with the exception of Bob. Now, if Bob's tests come back and nothing's wrong with him, then there's a conversation. Okay, what more care do we start needing to bring in for Dad? But for Janice and Martha, Janice, the conversation is starting the conversation. Okay, this is where Mom's at. What can we do for her? What is our limit? And when will she need memory care? And for Martha, it's definitely a conversation about memory care right now. So let's talk about memory care. What is a memory care facility? So memory care is specialized care. That's a great question. So someone asked, why not assisted living instead of memory care? Yes, assisted living is always an option. Primarily, we're focusing on memory care today, which is why I said they're appropriate for memory care. When we have, and we'll talk about this more down the line, but just briefly, when we have people that are ready for memory care, meaning they need that extra level of care and they have dementia, we sometimes start the journey with moving them into assisted living because it's easier. But it's another move for them to move into memory care. So I'll keep that comment in the back of my mind when we get to that section of why assisted living is not always the best option for someone when they're experiencing memory loss and dementia. So memory care is a specialized care for those living with various forms of dementia, secured setting to encourage independence and safety, and staff are trained in dementia and dementia-related symptoms. So often when we talk about memory care, we refer to it as a secured setting, meaning that there's doors that you need a code to get in and out, but they are not locked. So an individual could, in theory, leave that facility, but it's secured for them so that they're able to wander around freely, that they're still able to roam around the environment and explore and have that sense of independence, but they're not at risk to walk out of the community into the streets and try to leave. The staff in memory care are trained to work with individuals with dementia and dementia-related symptoms. So they're used to refusing care. They're used to refusing medications. Meal times are different. They're slower, less choices, so it's not overwhelming. Activities are more resident-centered and smaller, not requiring a lot of effort, and the activities go to the residents versus the residents having to go to the activities. And it's a different ratio of staff to residents to provide more personalized care. So when we talk about why would you choose a memory care facility? So memory care facility has 24/7 care, allowing for a family to return to their role as daughter, son, or spouse. An individual is no longer safe at home. So when an individual begins wandering out into the community, you're having to put door alarms on. You can't leave that individual alone. That's when it's time to consider memory care. And a memory care includes social engagement, exercise, routine, structured, and an improved diet. A memory care can provide a sense of safety. That routine reduces anxiety and challenging behaviors and promotes feelings of independence. And that socialization and sense of meaning and purpose enhances feeling of contributing to society. So all of those things that we need as individuals to still feel like we're part of a community, a memory care facility will provide that. A lot of the times we have our loved ones at home, and what are we doing with them throughout the day, right? We turn on the television, we have our meals, we'll run errands, but it's hard for someone with dementia to connect to other individuals that may not have dementia. So allowing that environment where they're with their peers and are able to relate is very beneficial. So on the same token is, why would someone not want to choose a memory care facility? And it's a really hard conversation to have. When is my loved one ready for memory care? And we always want to put that time off and off and off. So we'll say that stigma, the feeling of a broken promise, and guilt, denial, fear, or misunderstanding. So what do I mean by that? So there is definitely the stigma of a memory care facility. We always think of it as, oh, that place over there, it's locked. The others, they live over there. Which is not the case, but it's very, very common. And I'm sure Kara can attest to that, is in a memory care facility, they're beautiful, but it's different. And different isn't bad, but sometimes it means to people different, it's not good. The feeling of a broken promise. When we have our loved ones, even before they're diagnosed with dementia, the conversation always is, if I get dementia, just, I'm done. Don't do anything with me. Never put me into a home. Never do that to me. I want to stay in my own home. And we promise that. We say, oh, yes, of course, I would never put you in one of those types of places. I couldn't do that to you. And we make those promises at the beginning of the journey when we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know where that disease will leave our loved one. And sometimes it gets too hard for us to handle. We have someone who may have extreme behaviors. They may wander all the time. You think that you can put baby locks, or you can lock the door, put an alarm. It doesn't matter. They're still able to give out. They won't give up their car keys. They're still driving. You don't live with them, so they're on their own. So we promise them at one point in the beginning of the disease, but later on, we're not capable of taking care of them at our home anymore. And we feel like we can't break that promise. And then lastly, guilt or denial, fear, or misunderstanding. We don't know what a memory care facility is. We're scared to put our loved one in there. We think maybe that those individuals won't care for our loved one the way that we do, or we feel guilty that we're still living our life while putting our loved one there. And that all goes hand in hand together of, a memory care is not a good place, which is not true at all. But we hold on to those assumptions and that we limit our loved one from experiencing the best quality of life. So any questions on those conversations before I move on to our next topic? No? Okay. So, what are some signs that your loved one may be ready for memory care? So, if they experience increased confusion or disorientation, and again, when we have an increased confusion or disorientation, we always want to rule that out by speaking with um, our doctor. So, as we saw with Bob in the beginning, if we have someone who all of a sudden is more confused, that could be a UTI or dehydration. So, if we're experiencing more confusion, get your loved one into the doctor, get everything ruled out, and then from there, it's just a normal part of the progression of the disease. If your loved one's starting to wander or get lost, that is a very serious one. Individuals with dementia, they there's that lack of safety awareness, so they'll walk out not knowing where they're going to go, no frame of mind. They don't no longer have a sense of direction, so they just leave. Maybe they're going back home to Mississippi and they're walking out the door. Sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't. But wandering is very serious because that individual can get lost, and finding someone with Alzheimer's and dementia is very, very difficult. Personal safety concerns, so leaving the stoves on, falling at their home, a change in hygiene or self-care where you're noticing that they're neglecting themselves more, and increased aggression or mood swings. So their safety and your safety is now at risk. And when we talk about changes in personal safety, just something to think about if you have a loved one that doesn't live with you, but you're concerned, and that that flags up in your head thinking, is my mom still safe to live alone? When you visit one, check their shower. Does the shower look to use? Take a look at their shampoo and their conditioner. Are levels going down, or is the bottle staying the same? How about their fridge and pantry? Is there enough food? Is it expired? Is it moldy? Is the same food sitting there every single time that you visit? And when we talk about safety concerns at home, how are they with managing their daily activities? Are they cooking and cleaning at the same level that they were before? And what are the safety risks? How does that look? How are falls? Is your loved one at risk for falls? How is the medication? Is medication stored haphazardly where they're able to just grab it? If you're trusting your loved one to take their pills, but all of the pills are in a container, the medicine cabinet, and there's no sense of direction and they're confused. Are they taking their pills correctly? And just making sure that there's household accidents. So anything like chemicals are safe as well, and secured. And sometimes as we talk about these things, it's important that maybe that conversation of memory care, you're working on it, you're not fully there, or maybe you're thinking, you know yourself and you're not ready to have that conversation, but it's really important that you're prioritizing safety. So what I just talked about, even if your loved one's not ready for memory care, just please focus on that for their home, that medications stored safely, food safe, stoves are safe, everything for that individual is safe. So some health and medical indicators that a loved one may be ready for memory care, that they have frequent hospital visits or medical crises, a worsening of a chronic condition related to their dementia. And this can be such as they have diabetes and it's not being managed correctly because of their dementia. They're not able to take their insulin, they're not able to monitor their blood sugar, or they've started eating food that is not ideal for someone with dementia. A lot of the times when we have an individual with dementia, there's that craving for sugar. So when you have diabetes and that craving for sugar, it doesn't go hand in hand. When they start to need specialized care like eating or mobility, so they started to need assistance with eating, or maybe that their diet's changing and they need a softer diet or a puree texture, or their mobility's off and they need a lot of assistance with mobility. Maybe they need really, really heavy lifting to get out of bed or going to the restroom. And what's really important is caregiver burnout and physical exhaustion. So it's not even so much that your loved one needs a lot of care, it's that you as a caregiver, you've just reached your limit and you're not able to provide that care anymore, which is completely fine. it's, you have your own life, you have your own responsibilities. A lot of our caregivers these days have their own young children that they're responsible for, as we had that sandwich generation. So if you're not able to provide that care, then that's the time to have that conversation that maybe your loved one's ready for memory care. And so as we talk about caregiver burnout, we look at a couple different things. We look at emotional and physical exhaustion. We look at the impact on the caregiver's mental and physical health. Caregiving affects personal life, career, and relationships. And when you start to feel angry and lashing out. So if you're noticing that change in yourself, that you're angry, you're lashing out, your own health is taking a hit, or your own mental health, that you're starting to feel depressed or anxious, then that's the time to have the conversation that it's you no longer able to do it. And again, there comes with a sense of shame and guilt that, oh, I can't do it. But being a caregiver to someone with dementia is unlike any other type of caregiving responsibility. And it's extremely challenging and extremely difficult. And it's okay to admit that. And again, we just realizing that all of this takes a burden on you. And if you're not at your best, you can't provide the best care for your loved one. So right here, we have the Zaret Burden interview for caregiver burnout. And I will be sending out this slides to everybody afterwards, so this will be included. But this is a short interview form for yourself as the caregiver to talk about caregiver burnout. And are you experiencing it? So have you lost control of do you have that feeling that you've lost control of your life since your relative's illness? That you don't have as much privacy as you would like because of your relative, that your health has suffered. You feel strained when you're around you or your relative, or I'm sorry, you're strained when you're around your relative. So this looks at all different aspects of caregiver burnout, and it's an opportunity for you to self-reflect and have that private conversation with yourself of where you really are. And for some caregiving, it's fine, and they don't really feel this stress or burden. For others, they feel it every single day. So it's really just an opportunity for you to take this quiz and see where you are. And again, maybe it's not ready for memory care, but you're ready for more help within the home. And so this gives you that clue as well. Like, okay, let's see if we can have somebody come into the house for a couple hours a day to help. So family conversations, this is a really hard part, right? Is how do we start the conversation that we're ready for memory care? Starting the conversation with yourself, starting the conversation with the family, and it's starting the conversation with your loved one. So for this, it's really important that you do a lot of different things. But the first one is prepare. You don't want to procrastinate. You want to start having that conversation sooner rather than later. And this goes for assisted living as well, as we talk about this. A long time ago, one of the marketing directors at an assisted living I worked at said, they have a lot of people that come in and look at various homes and facilities, and they say, oh, my mom's not ready yet. My mom's not ready yet. And then a couple weeks later, mom falls, breaks her hip, can't go home. Now she's ready. And they're scrambling to move in. And mom can't enjoy the quality of life that she could have before that happened, where she could have enjoyed the activities, the meals, and socializing with friends. So it's really important to have that conversation early and to be proactive about it. And even if the conversation is just let's start looking at places, then we can move forward from there. So at least we have a sense of what we're looking at. And we're beating that stigma by going and seeing these beautiful memory cares and knowing what they have to offer. So you want to prepare, you want to get all involved parties on the same page. So before you bring this forward to your loved one, you want everybody in the family to be on the same page. And if there's somebody that's not on the same page, they should probably not be a part of the conversation if they're going to be bringing a negative energy. And especially, we always have family members that aren't close by, they have the strongest opinions, and they want to dictate what happens to mom, but they're not part of her active care plan. So you want to choose the best time and place to have this conversation. So where and when is the best time to talk? You don't want to talk in the late afternoon. And this is when you're talking with your loved one. You don't want to talk in the late afternoon or evenings because it's typically a harder time for those with dementia. There's more confusion, more behaviors. We're experiencing that sundowning. So mornings are going to often be a better time. And is this conversation better to have at home or in public? Does your loved one, hold to the standard where in public we need to be polite? Or is it better for a conversation at home where they feel more safe and secure? This is a conversation that needs to be face to face, and it should be where your loved one feels most comfortable. So often it's going to be at home. And when you first start talking about this, you want to keep the conversation very casual. And so, unless you're in a crisis mode, it's best to have multiple conversations about moving to memory care over a duration of time. This is a really big decision, and it's much easier if the first discussion focuses more on exploring ideas and points of view rather than saying, hey, it's time for you to move to memory care. You might begin by asking your loved one general's opinion about having more help, opportunities to participate in activities, or discuss the benefits of memory support therapy programs. And you want to personalize the conversation. You'll likely come across many excellent suggestions on productive conversations about moving to memory care. However, it's important to adapt all of the discussions to your loved one's specific needs and personalities. So for instance, um, oh, I'm just talking freely. um, for the my father-in-law, he is a very social man. He loves to talk to everybody. He loves to give everybody his opinion. He likes to be in a seat of power. So like sitting on a board, that's what he likes. Versus my mom, who is very much a homebody. She likes to be by herself. She likes to read, watch her Jeopardy, have her Taco Bell. So when we're talking to those two individuals, how we frame memory care and the benefits that they offer, or again, assisted living, we're going to be coming at it two different angles. And consider preferences again. So for the individuals, what's going to be best for them when you have the conversation? Is it going to be a one-on-one group, or would it be better to have the family involved? Does their doctor need to be involved? Do they have a relationship with their doctor where they're highly respected? Is that going to be something that's beneficial for the doctor to be part of the conversation? And then again, tour community early on and see what it's like firsthand. At the beginning of the conversation too, so that you can see what is it? What is this even like? Because there's always the stigma. We have this idea of what a memory care is, but we really truly don't know until we walk into one and see what's going on. And propose a partnership. Your loved one has already had to adjust to so many transitions just throughout the disease process. It's understandable that moving to a memory care community might seem frightening or cause uncertainty. So a common mistake is to present the decision as one that's already been made for them. Instead, position the topic as a conversation between partners whenever possible. Discuss the pros and cons and offer to return with answers to any questions that they may have if you don't know the answer right off the bat. And be a good listener. So when facing a difficult conversation, we may barely hear what the other person is saying, and we're distracted by formulating our response to see what's already been to what we already assume will be asked. So ask your loved one opinions on moving to memory care and then listen carefully to those answers. Try not to interrupt and encourage openness and honesty so he or she feels truly heard. And then we have a couple more. So talk about the benefits, discuss the many advantages of memory support community, and try to keep the conversation constructive. Look at the positives of a community instead of the negatives of staying at home. So again, having that ability to socialize, having a routine, having these gourmet meals every meal, that's always a plus. It often happens to match a specific benefit with a challenge your loved one is facing. So if boredom is an issue, then you might want to talk about the activities. If lonely, speak to the social opportunities that are available. And lastly, you want to ask for help. This is a really tough conversation to have. So again, if it's involving Alzheimer's Orange County in the conversation, if it's involving the community that you're looking at, the doctor, friends, families, anybody that the person respects and trusts, involve them in the conversation. And then lastly, addressing disagreements. This is going to be really tough. When they answer, what if the answer is no? And your loved one's like, nope, I'm not moving. So when first asking your loved one if now might be the time to talk about moving to memory care, prepare for the answer no. Plan ahead of how you will respond if you reach an impasse. This is a hard decision to make and accept. So don't react with anger or blame, but empathy and support. You want to circle back to how engagement may slow the symptoms of dementia, encourage your loved one to see there is much life to be had after a diagnosis, and how a memory support community can make that happen. And overall, you just want to focus on the benefits. You want to talk about now, not forever. So this is something that you're considering now. And of course, you could revisit in a couple months and see how they're doing. Most of the time when we have someone that moves into memory care, it's scary and it's hard and they don't want to be there. And then after a short while, that's their new home, their new friends, they're happy and they're not going to want to leave. But it's getting that individual there in the first place. So any questions on family conversations? No? Quiet group? Okay. So how to choose a memory care. So another thing that I'm going to send out is it's a 2-page and it has all of these different questions for what you're looking for and what to do when you get to that community and things to look for. So it's going to be a lot longer than what I'm going over right now. So what are some factors to consider? Our location. Who do you want your loved one to be by? Do they want to stay close by their home because that's where their church and their friends are? Or is it better for them to come live closer to you so that you can visit them often? Types of memory care. So we have a lot of different types of memory care. We have little boarding cares, we have memory cares that are connected to assisted livings, and then we have standalone memory care. So again, it's going to be really specific to the person. As I spoke about earlier with my father-in-law and my mom would be perfect for a boarding care. They're small, they're about 6 people living in a boarding care, about 2 staff members, much smaller, more intimate, not a lot of activities, but more oversight. That's perfect for my mom. Now, my father-in-law, he's going to want a big memory care, and usually a memory care attached to assisted living so that there's a lot more opportunities. Because there's that social aspect, there is the meals, there's more residents, more staff. It's just a different feeling. And then we have our standalone memory cares, which are usually very large, have about 50 plus residents. Certain memory cares, such as Silverado, focus specifically on behaviors and usually tougher types of dementias where there is more aggression. And levels of care versus a la carte. So this is important to ask when you're looking is what is the care like? Do you pay for each service individually, or are there levels of care? So you move in and you're level 1, and as you start to need more care, level 2. Both of them have pros and cons when you're looking at the financial aspect, because if they're at level 1 and that's all inclusive, then everything's covered. But if they don't need a lot of services, then a la carte is going to be the best. Because when we move our loved ones into memory care, sometimes they're moving in at the very beginning of their disease where they don't need a lot of care. They still are able to do a lot of things independently. They're looking for a place to transition through their disease process. And again, what is important to your loved one? As you're touring, what are the highlights of that community? What do they focus on? Is it that they have an exceptional dining program? Well, if your loved one doesn't really care about food, maybe that's not important. Maybe your loved one loves gardening and being outside. Well, what's their patio like? What's their backyard like? Do they have access, to go outside freely? What is, or maybe their schedule's off and they like to be up all night. Well, is that something that's okay? Is that encouraged? Maybe they like to help others. They love cleaning. Is that going to be something that's, okay? Is that your loved one's allowed to clean up after meal times? Because that's what's important to them. So finding out what does your loved one want to do, what makes them happy, and then just making sure that that facility, they can meet that need. So when you go to look at a facility, what are you looking for? You want to make sure that it's clean, open, and bright. You want to ask questions such as what's the staffing ratio? What's the cost? And you want to ask for any of their licensing surveys. So when we talk about staffing ratio, that is how many staff members per residence. And this is a tricky one because there doesn't have to be one. There's not really a requirement. It's going to be based on how the level of care that the residents have, right? So if all of the residents living in that memory care are at a high acuity and they need a lot of help, you're anticipating more staff. But if all of the residents are pretty independent, less staff. So you want to just keep an eye out. What are you seeing staff wise? How many staff members are you seeing, and what do the residents look like? Do they look like they need a lot of help? Then you're going to want to need more staff. So the community may not give you a direct answer like, oh yes, this is exactly, because it's always changing, but visually, what do you see? You want to know about the costs. And again, that's the a la carte versus the level of care. Is there an anticipated increase in costs? What does that look like? And then the licensing survey. So all assisted livings, they get checked by licensing, and that surveys are available upon asking. And you really want to visit various times of days. So a lot of the times when you do a tour, you go Tuesday at 10 a.m. and the community is vibrant. There's a lot going on, a lot of staff, and it's great. But what does a Sunday at 2 p.m. look like? Usually there's not going to be management. There's not going to be a lot of, it's a quieter day. Usually residents are leaving the community to go out to family and church. So what does the community look and feel like then? What does it feel like late at night, early in the morning? You just want to make sure that you're visiting a lot throughout the week and not just sticking to that one time, because things change throughout the week. And when you evaluate the quality of care and environment, you want to look at not just the residents, but the staff as well. Are they happy? Are they engaged? Are staff sitting around not talking to the residents that are around them, or is everybody having a conversation? How do the residents look? Do they look happy? Do they look well dressed, well taken care of? Stop and say hi. Does staff say hi back to you? Just kind of what's your interaction, and evaluate activities and meals. You want to see what your loved one will be experiencing. Meals should be quiet, focused on the resident, well paced, not rushed. What does that look like? And activities should be stimulating, engaging, not just sitting in front of a television watching TV. So again, you want to just really experience the full day and what it would be like for your for your loved one. And go with these questions. So again, I'm going to be sending out the sheet that has all of this information and much more detailed checklist for you to take when you start having that conversation. And then, of course, some final considerations when you're thinking about moving is the cost. That's usually the hardest part of the conversation, is the cost. Is how are you going to pay for this? And one of the things about assisted living is when we usually think about assisted living instead of memory costs, is assisted living can be a little bit cheaper. So that's an important conversation to have with the community. Is my loved one has a diagnosis of dementia. They may not be, they're still very social and outgoing, maybe appropriate for assisted living. Maybe we'll transition to memory care down the line. It's a conversation. Again, having that move twice is very difficult. They establish a new routine, new friends, and then that move is going to be exponentially harder to move into memory care versus straight into memory care. But when you're also covering, okay, who's going to pay for this? What's their social security look like? Do they have any other benefits, a pension? Is family willing to contribute? Do they have long-term care insurance? Long-term care insurance can help pay. Do they have VA benefits? And then as you're planning for long-term care expenses, nobody knows how long someone with dementia will live. There's there's an average of this many years, but people live a long time with this disease. So how long can you realistically afford for that loved one to live in memory care? So there's going to be a lot of different options based on cost. Board and care is going to be, a little bit cheaper. Again, it's not going to have all the bells and whistles of a memory care, but it's a very good option. That's a little bit cheaper. And then just pricing that out. And also, okay, as my loved one starts to need more care, which they will, what does that look like? So it's not looking at the immediate moving my mom in and she's that this, I'm going to say a level 1, which is the lowest level. That's great. We can afford that. Well, okay, what does a level 3 care look like? And is that something that we can afford as well? Because you, as I said earlier, you don't want to move somebody and then move them again and then move them again. You want to find the place that's going to be that place for your loved one. So these are things to think about. But again, long-term care insurance and VA benefits are a great option as well if your loved one has those. So now we've done all of that and our loved ones moving into a memory care. So how do we make that transition smooth? Because it's challenging. Having the conversation is tough, getting the agreement is tough, and then when that day comes, it's hard as well. But you want to prepare your loved one emotionally and mentally, so it's a constant conversation. You want to let them know that you're there for them. And again, if it doesn't work out, okay, you have a plan B in place. You want to personalize the room before moving in. So what their room looks like now at home, that's you want to replicate that at the memory care. So where their lamp is, where their bed is, because they're used to that. One, they're going to walk in and they're going to feel safe and secure and like, oh, this is my room. I know this place. And then two, they know their way around it. So it reduces falls. If you move the closets, like a dresser somewhere new, they won't be able to find it because they're used to it being at the right side of their bed. So it just makes, them feel more secure and keeps that independence for them. And you want to personalize the outside of their room as well so that they know where their room is. You want to choose the right time of day. And again, this is person specific. Yes, generally those with dementia are a lot stronger in the morning and more cognitively sharp versus later in the afternoon when they may begin experiencing sundowning or experience more confusion. But again, knowing your loved one, what's their strongest point of day? You want to aim around that. So if it's moving in around lunchtime, whatever's going to be easiest for you and them. And then again, include the community staff in the transition. You want to make sure that the staff is there to help you. They're introducing themselves. They're making your loved one feel special. They're there to say, oh, come show me your room. I want to see what that looks like so that they can help. This is going to be, again, very specific how you exit once they move in, because it's going to be specific to you and your loved one. I've seen all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sometimes it's having a conversation saying, okay, mom, I'm leaving you here. This is your room. I will be back tomorrow to check in on you. And it's okay, thank you. Other times we've seen people that have had to kind of slip out while staff is engaging your loved one. And that's okay too, because the person's where they are mentally, like they didn't think to ask, oh, where did my daughter go? But it's important to be on standby, because if your loved one is not having an easy time transitioning, they may need you to come back just to hang out a little bit longer. It's again, you're working with the community to make that transition successful, and that might require a little bit more help on your end. Yes, the goal is that you're able to hand your loved one off to them and that they care for them at the same level that you did and that they're safe. But sometimes that's not always realistic. So just continuing to be part of that transition. And then how do you make that transition smooth for you? Again, understanding that feelings of guilt or doubt are normal. That's just how it is. If it was possible to keep all of our loved ones at home, I'm sure a majority of people would, but with the nature of the disease, that's not always possible. And so you're doing the best thing for them by letting them live in this community that is really going to meet their needs and offer socialization, engagement, and all of the things that you're not able to. And it gives you the opportunity to have your life back and restore that relationship that you once had with them, whether it be spouse or child, no longer caregiver first. You need to set realistic expectations for the transition. Hopefully it's smooth. That's not always the case. Sometimes you move someone in and they're great, and then 8 o'clock rolls around and they're looking for their wife and it's mayhem. And that again is just, it's normal. But you need to have that conversation. Okay, what's the plan? What am I going to do? Am I going to ask the community to just have him keep calling me and I'm going to turn my phone off. And so that way he's leaving a voicemail and feels like he's being heard? Or are you going to go back to the community and you're going to spend the first couple of nights with your husband? It's working with the community of what's going to be best for you and for your loved one. But have that conversation beforehand. Don't have it the night of when all of this is happening, because it'll be very overwhelming. Again, finding ways to stay involved in your loved one's care. This is multifaceted. So when we move someone into a community, each community will have their preference of, oh yeah, come back the next day and visit. Or, what, we find it best that if loved one stays away for a few weeks and lets them acclimate. Personally, I don't have a preference on that. My rule of thumb is it's whatever works. So if you go back to the community the next day and your loved one's great and says, bye, I'll see you later, and you're able to walk off and they're fine, then great, continue to visit. If you go and visit and it's chaotic, they're yelling, they're screaming, you've disrupted the day, you've disrupted the environment, your loved one is just like not letting you go, well, then maybe taking some time back and letting them enjoy and acclimate is going to be ideal. So you don't know until you try, but it's going to be whatever you want to do. And personally, if you move your loved one in and you say, I just need some time, I had a really tough time with all of this, I need space, that's fine. Take that space. Your loved one is in good hands, being cared for by people that are specifically trained in dementia. They'll be okay. And then it's also, you want to make sure you're staying up to top on care plans, that you're constantly in communication with the team, asking how they're doing, just seeing what's going on. And just, even if it's not going in person, you're still calling, you're just seeing how everything is going. And I already just talked about it, but you're going to allow for time for your loved one to adjust to their new home. It takes time. Every person's different, but it will take time. I've had 2 experiences that always stick out to me. I had a gentleman move in and his wife was extremely nervous because they were attached at the hip. He was very, very dependent on her to get through the day, and she was just really worried. And so he moved in. She was calling every 30 minutes. How is he doing? How is he doing? She was just a really nervous wreck. She was going to give herself a couple days to spend time with her daughter before coming to visit, but she still was always texting me, how is he doing? How is he doing? And he was fine. He was great. He made friends. He had a lady that he liked sitting with. She came to visit. He walked her to the door and said, bye, I'll see you later. I'm going to go back to my room now. And she was just floored. She wasn't expecting that. And then I have another one who her husband passed away. She moved in and she was very anxious. She was having a really hard time adjusting, constantly pacing. And her daughter also had that nervous energy though as well, and would come in and, I'm just really worried about my mom. I'm worried about my mom. And she was slowly, the resident was slowly getting acclimated, but it was taking a couple months. And the daughter said, I'm going to take her home for Christmas, spend some time with family. And so they left. And about 45 minutes later, she returned. And her daughter said, my mom said, I'm ready to go home now. And she wanted to come back here. And this is where she felt safe. So it really is, it varies person to person. But you just need to allow your loved one that time. It's kind of like camp, I like to say, when your child goes to camp and they write you a letter every week, like, you need to take me out of here. I hate it. This is the worst thing. And then slowly it becomes the best thing and they don't want to leave. So that's just the nature of the game. But they may hate it. They may tell you they hate it and they want to go home, and then you leave and they're having a great time. They're back with their friends enjoying the activity. So just take those things for a grain of salt, but it takes time, is really the most important part of all of that, of my spiel. So that is the end of my presentation. Any questions that you may have? I got a really quiet group. That's okay. I'll send out the PowerPoint. I'm going to send out the checklist for you all. This is our helpline information. So if you at any time after this have a question, need a little guidance, just need someone to listen to your event, we are here for you. Our phone number is 844-373-4400. If nobody has any questions, again, you can come off mute, you can put it in the chat box, you can email me directly later if you have a specific question. Kara, is there anything that you want to add? Because apparently we could hear you earlier on and
No, I think it was a wonderful presentation, Lauren, and thank you for sharing this information. The more we're equipped on the front end of making these decisions, the better they can go. So thank you for sharing this with us.
yes, thank you all for attending. I hope everybody has a great rest of their day and until the next time. Bye, everybody.